Okay, this is actually pretty amazing. It gives a real genuine boost, but without any power. Have a listen. I've got this really awesome pedal for you to build today. It's totally passive, powered by your effects loop. There's no trick here, just some basic nerdy audio stuff. Now, if you've ever wanted to have a crack at making a pedal before, this one's really cool because it requires no power. It's a really safe build, plus it has an extremely low parts count. I'm gonna show you step by step how to build one of these, and then I'm gonna go a little further, adding some more options and creating a way more deluxe version of this pedal. Right, so how does this all work? Well, we can't magically create gain out of nothing, but we can trade one thing for another. In this case, we can trade frequency bandwidth for voltage gain. And to do that, we need a transformer. So think of it like this. Your buffered effects loop has plenty of drive from its send circuitry, and a transformer funnels some of that wide, flat frequency into a narrower, more focused band. By narrowing the bandwidth, the voltage that is focused in that area increases. And this results in a real audible boost, even though the circuit is completely passive. It's not adding power, it's just reshaping the energy that's already there. Now, I really like this sort of booster because of where it's placed inside your amp. So think of your amp like this. You've got a preamp, you've got a power stage, and you've got a speaker. This is the basic staging of your amplifier. Now, the cool thing about your effects loop is you can insert anything into the amplifier at this point here, right in between the preamp and power stage. Now, your preamp has all your preamp tubes, your power stage has your phase inverter and your power tubes, and that's where you're going to be inserting this boost. This spot for your boost gives a more noticeable volume boost, not just more saturation like when you're running it into the front end here. It also colors your tone in a cool way while pushing your amp's power stage harder, which is something that I really like. So let's get into the parts we need. Now, if you like these sort of videos, please hit that like button because it lets me know you like these sort of videos and you want me to make more. Right, so first up, we've got the enclosure. This is a 1590B style enclosure. You could probably fit it into something a little smaller, but the 1590B is nice and easy. There's lots of room to work with. Then you're going to need a couple of jacks. These are a couple of Switchcraft jacks. Then we've got the switch. This is a 3-pole double throw switch. So then we've got the transformer. Now this transformer is a 42 TM017-RC. Now this transformer works really well with the effects loop. I did a project a while ago using a different transformer, but that will not work with a lot of effects loops. It's just not quite right. And I've got another really exceptional sounding transformer. It's a little more spendy than these. These are about $3, but I'll tell you about that one a little later on. And then you've got all the usual stuff like wire and, you know, other things like solder. All right, I'm going to show you how to mark this up to drill it. Very easy with this one. You only need 3 holes. But anyway, we'll do it the usual way anyway, just because it's a good habit to get into. First of all, we need to get a center line. Now, having a center line is not really something we're going to need in this particular build, but it's a good habit to get into because everything you do references from this line. If you're always trying to reference from the side of the enclosure because of the rounded edge, it's kind of hard to get it really exact. So even if you don't get your center line perfectly in the center, because everything's referenced from it, you generally get a fairly symmetrical looking pedal, if that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to go up from the bottom. I'm going to go 30 mils up from the bottom. So that's going to be my first hole. That's going to be where the switch goes right there. And I'm going to put the jacks in the end here. So I like to measure 10 millimeters in from that point there on both sides. And then 12 millimeters down. So it looks like that. Couple of holes, that's where our jacks are going to be, our input and output jacks. And that is it. So now we've just got to center punch those and just drill those out. So when you drill them out, make sure you use a small pilot hole first, like a 2.5 millimeter pilot hole, and then drill them out to their size. So we're gonna have a 12 mil hole for the switch, 9.5 millimeters for each one of these jacks. So let's get that done and then we'll load those parts in there. Okay, that is all drilled up. So I've got my foot switch hole and I've got the 2 end jacks there done. First, let's put in the foot switch. So the foot switch will normally come with a couple of nuts. Now you want one on the inside. So what I like to do is I like to put that nut on and then I like to unwind 4 half turns. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you want to put on your internal tooth lock washer because that always goes on the inside. Sometimes you see that on the outside. It's almost always been put on wrong. Sometimes you've got to do that though, but not with these. Right, push it through. I changed the that washer out. I like having the keyway pointing up normally, that way. It's just a personal preference thing. Right, and you're going to wind that on. All right, get this on, do this up, 14 mil. Inside, make sure you have it nice and square. Like, there's nothing worse than a wonky switch. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but as square as you can get it anyway by eyeballing it is good, because it just makes the whole build look a lot nicer. Okay, so next we're going to put these jacks on. Now, I actually get these internal tooth lock washers separately that I use with these because it gives a really good ground connection inside. So you've got the internal tooth lock washer on the inside, then the external washer, and then the nut. Wind that one on. Same thing with these. Try and keep it looking square if you can. So that's everything in there. That's all we need in there. If you wanted to, you can add an LED, and you could probably fit a battery here. If you wanted an on-off LED, that's totally cool. But that's the basics of all you need. So let's go to the next step where we put that transformer in, mount it, and then wire everything up. Right, so here it all is wired up. It's pretty simple, really. So let's have a quick look through at how this is done. So this is your input jack here. So the hot wire from your input jack coming from the tip here comes down to the middle lug on the switch. This is wired up like the most standard way a true bypass switch is wired up. For an alternative way, a lower noise version I do have on my website, probably not really relevant for this circuit, but anyway, you can check that out. It's a free download in the free section. Right, so it comes down to here. Then if we're in bypass mode, if this switch is switched off, you're going to be running through this wire here up to this lug, and that there goes around and joins to the hot lug on the output jack, which is connected to this tip here as well. So that is the output wiring. Okay, the transformer is pretty easy. One side of the transformer now, the secondary side, we're going into first. We're kind of using it in reverse. See, there's a P on that side there. That P stands for primary. That should be facing towards the jacks. So you can see on one of these transformers, you've got 3 legs per side. You just want to snip the middle leg off each side. And we're going to be using one leg on the secondary side. That's going to be our input leg. And then the same leg on the opposite side, on that primary side, is going to be our output leg. And then these 2 end legs, I tie to that metal tab there, and they get grounded. So that's what I've done here. So there's my input leg there. You can sort of just see it there. And then I have got my output leg there, which goes back to the switch here. This goes to this top left-hand lug on the switch. And then I've got the 2 bottom legs there. They tie to the tab there, and that gets grounded. I just ground that onto the input jack. Now, you can run a wire from the ground on the output side, especially if you're not running internal tooth locking washers. You're probably going to have to do that, but I normally don't worry about it. If I've got these washers on, that connection is solid. So the way I mounted the transformer is I put a little bit of double-sided adhesive foam underneath it. It's pretty cheap stuff. And then I stuck it to the inside of the enclosure, and then I just cable tied it to the switch. So now we're just going to plug it in and test it, and I can show you. What I'll do now though is I'll show you my upgraded version with all the extra bells and whistles, and then we'll demo that one. That one also obviously does what this one does anyway, so I can show you exactly what this one sounds like, plus all the extra cool bits and pieces. Okay, so this is the more deluxe version that I've come up with, and I've added a few extra options. So first of all, I've added a second transformer in there. So that one is the Triad SP21. And that transformer is an awesome sounding transformer. I love the sound of that one. It's probably one of my faves. It's a little more spendy at around $15 or so. But on the switch here, I can select the original transformer that we use today. Then in the bottom position, I've got the SP21 transformer. And in the middle, I'm kind of stacking the 2 transformers. So if you can imagine a short person up on top of a tall person's shoulders, kind of forming one mega person, that's kind of what this is like. You've got 2 transformers stacked, and what that gives me is, in the up position, the original transformer is kind of like the upper mid boost. Bottom is more of a sort of slightly tighter, really sweet full range boost, not quite full range. And in the middle, you don't get a whole ton more boost, but you get a more of a full range sort of sound. And plus the middle position works better with this control. So this one here is a switch where I can click around to some different voicings, and that's just capacitors across that primary side of that transformer. Different capacitors from quite low. I wouldn't go any higher than 10 nanofarad. So it's just giving me different voicings of this boost as we move around. It moves where that peaked range of frequencies is. Now this last little switch here, I call it a compression switch, but it's actually just a couple of diodes to ground. The diodes I'm using are 1N5817s, and I've just got them shunting to ground on the primary side of that transformer. But it doesn't really add an overdrive or a distortion sound, it just adds like a nice compression until you really crank up the amp. Then you can push it into some really quite natural early overdrive. Because of the coupling of the transformers and those diodes, it doesn't sound like typical hard clipping. It sounds really, really nice and natural. So all those options combined creates a really versatile pedal. I really think this thing's pretty amazing. Right, let's have a run through this unit. Now, Fourth Wall Plus members, I do have a schematic for free for you guys of this exact unit, my more deluxe unit over there. And if you just want to support the channel, it's over there in my web shop as well. For my setup today, I'm running this pedal through the effects loop on my Hot Rod Deluxe 4. And then I'm going out of that into that DIY attenuator project that we did recently, so I can then record it directly into Logic. So that is the setup for today. It's pretty basic. I know I'm using my more deluxe pedal here, but how I've got it configured right now is exactly the same as how we built that other one today. So it's going to sound exactly like this in this configuration now that I'm going to show you. So this is what it sounds like. It's got quite a cool voicing, and especially good if you're using dirt. Let me just put some dirt on. Right, I've just got it on that dirty channel of the Deluxe. This is what it sounds like without the pedal engaged. Quite a cool way to shape the sound as well as boost it up in volume as well. Okay, let's just run through that voicing control. Now that just shifts that resonant peak of the boost. So I like it there. Turn all the way off. Quite dark now, see? Quite a cool feature to add on. It gives you a whole bunch of different extra options. So yeah, really cool. This is my favorite switch. This is a three-way switch, so an on switch. And in the up position, it is that same transformer that we used today. In the fully lower position, it's that SP21. Now I really love this one. It gives a little bit more of a full range boost, and it just tightens up that low end a little as well. I really like what it does to that power stage. You can really hear it pushing that power stage. If I play here, you can hear that's pretty much clean. But you can hear a little bit of dirt creeping in, and that's not coming from the preamp, that's coming from that power stage, the phase inverter and output tube. So you're getting more power stage clipping, which is something I prefer. And in that middle position, you've got the two transformers stacked. Kind of softens the top end a little bit using that other transformer, and it beefs up the low end just a touch. You don't really get much more boost. So I like it about there. That's a cool sound. Some really cool options here, some really cool voicings. Oh, almost forgot. So then we've got this compression switch here. So if I put this on to the SP21, this is just diodes to ground, okay? But it kind of gives more of a compression feel. I think I've got the amp cooking. It's up pretty hard at the moment, so it's probably gonna push it into more of a overdrive, but this is just the boost here, straight up boost. So it's gonna suck some of that boost away, and kind of, it feels way more compressed. You can actually hear the clipping actually in this setting, because I've actually got the amp really freaking loud at the moment. Actually, that's quite nice. I quite like that. If you lower that volume level down on your amp, like if it's not pushing so hard, this sort of acts more like a compression. So it kind of, it warms up that top end a bit. It takes a bit of that sheen away from the top end, but it also, you can feel it compressing. It's like a distressor if you've ever used one of those before. A couple of important things you do need to know before using it. You do need a buffered effects loop. You can't use a passive effects loop. Most effects loops are buffered down anyway, but it does need that current drive to be able to convert that energy into actual boost. So depending on your buffer's design, you may need to alter a few of these components. So if you are building one with that voicing switch might work a little bit differently depending on your buffer. I mean, that's kind of what makes this pedal really cool, is that it kind of works with your amp's design. It doesn't sort of force it into any particular sort of sound. So you can get a really unique sounding boost that's very unique to you by building something like this. If you're using it in the loop with other pedals, it's totally fine. Just treat it like another pedal in the loop, but you may have to play around with its position in the loop depending on those pedals, if they are buffered bypass or not. That could actually affect how the boost sounds. It could be better, it's just going to be different, right? So you put it straight after that send, or you could mix it somewhere amongst those pedals, but it will still basically work exactly the same. The other really cool thing that you can do is run it on your pedal board. As long as you've got a buffered pedal in front of it, like a tuner or a Boss pedal or something with a buffered bypass, it'll work great. Now, there was a similar project a little while ago based around a different transformer. Now, that won't work particularly well in an effects loop. Well, it depends on your effects loop, but most of the time it's not going to work. But this one will work in both places. It's just going to sound different on your board. So definitely worth experimenting with. I think this is something really cool and really useful. You could take a boost with you to the gig and not have to worry about any power. I think something like this is really powerful, and running it in your effects loop like this puts it in that sort of sweet spot where you're pushing that power stage into clipping. Let me know in the comments if you put this one together, and we'll catch you in the next video.